right, moving right along here. This is my promo video for my new Substack essay. I forget whether it's the fourth or the fifth. I'm losing track of it now, but excuse me. So this one is about, it's kind of a sketch of how I see what the coming planetary religion might look like. And if we do end up having a single globalized religion, it'll be something that will encompass everyone. So it has to be inclusive of everyone. So it has to be completely indifferent. And there are grounds for this. There are precedents for this in both Christianity, Buddhism, and Islam. As we'll see in a moment here, I'm not going to give away what I think the outlines of the religion look like, because I want you to subscribe to my Substack account, which is $5 a month, no big deal. So what I have done basically is I've taken Arnold Toynbee's model, which I think is very useful. And as everyone knows, I'm a huge Spengler fan, and he's my all-time favorite cultural philosopher, let's say. But Toynbee's extremely sharp, and he actually knew history better than Spengler did, which is a bit unbelievable, but he did. But Toynbee doesn't know as much about art and philosophy. He comes out of the British Anglo, empirical tradition, and the two of them, in a way, are rehearsing the old empiricist versus rationalist. Rationalist in the sense of believing that we're born with innate Platonic ideas such as God, freedom, the soul. That debate that went on all through philosophy, which Kant tried to settle and resolve once and for all. He didn't. What he ended up doing was inaugurating a whole new epoch of philosophy. Hegel, Fichte, and Schelling came along and said, "Oh, well then, if that's true, let's do this." And the Germans, they keep rewriting Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. Hegel's phenomenology is a rewrite of the Critique of Pure Reason, violating all of its rules, namely that you can't make metaphysical certainties. And for Hegel, history is the unfolding of the mind of God, the absolute, which is a term that he stole from Schelling, the absolute through history. Kant would say you can't do that because we can't have absolute knowledge of metaphysics. And so anyhow, I'm digressing here from the project. So the paper is based on a kind of a fusion of Arnold Toynbee with Karl Jaspers, and I find his axial age idea very useful to combine with Toynbee's model of three different generations of civilization. And I believe that we're headed for a fourth generation with this coming planetary religion that will be global in scope for the first time. In the first generation of high civilization, and what makes a civilization a high civilization is that it has a developed mathematics, it has to have writing. That's not, those two are non-negotiable. Monumental architecture for the building of temples, pyramids, ziggurats, what have you, and it also has to have some form of astronomy or astrology. Back then, they didn't make much of a distinction between the two. So the first generation of civilization comes in, of course, with Egypt and Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is composed of two different ethnicities, the Akkadians and the Sumerians. The Akkadians are the earliest Semites that we know of. They spoke Akkadian. The Sumerians spoke Sumerian. Two different ethnicities. And they did go to war with each other, starting with Sargon of Akkad, who was an Akkadian. And he was the first sort of Napoleon figure to conquer all of Mesopotamia, unified it. And the first man, this is 1,000 years before Akhenaten's experiment of leaving Thebes to go found the city of Amarna out in the middle of the desert. He builds the city of Akkad. It's the first city, as far as I know, to be thought up by the mind of a single man and then executed. And then they build this artificial city of Akkad. My next blog essay is going to be on cities. So this interests me quite a great deal because I want to know what Akkad. We still haven't found the ruins of it. We know about where it must be, but nobody's found the ruins of it yet. And it only lasted for about a century before it was overwhelmed by an external proletariat of Gudian barbarians who just got in, swamped it, and destroyed it. And there are reasons for why the Akkadian immune system there was so weak. It was extremely weak because the city was artificial to begin with. Organic cities that grow up like plants from out of the soil are rooted and very difficult to get rid of. Jerusalem has been there forever. It will be there forever because it's axially rooted. But I'll save those ideas for the next blog essay. So the first generation, we get Egypt and Mesopotamia, and two satellite societies for each. Around the corner, down the Persian Gulf from Mesopotamia, is the Indus Valley, where the Harappan civilization comes into being about 1,000 years later, about 2,500 BC. And then Toynbee calls these satellite civilizations because they're smaller in scale. And the Indus Valley the Harappan civilization did indeed have writing. It's never been deciphered. And then the Egyptians had a satellite society, Minoan Crete, which also gets up and running about 2,500 BC. So we have four societies, two mega civilizations and two satellite civilizations that come into being as the first generation of high civilization. So that's generation number one, and its primary trait is that it is religious. These societies never developed the higher mind, the mind of philosophy, the philosophical mind. Not that philosophy is superior to religion or the visionary imagination in any way. It's not. But it doesn't come into being until the second generation of civilization, which comes in after an interregnum in the second millennium BC, from about 2000 down to about 1200 BC, maybe a little bit earlier. The Indo-Aryans and the Indo-Europeans come down from the north. They've been there domesticating the horse since about 5000 BC. That seems to be the oldest sites that we can find where there are horse bones or horse skulls put into the graves of Indo-European chieftains. Mallory's book, In Search of the Indo-Europeans, is the book to read on this if you're interested. So we get Indo-Europeans in the west and Indo-Aryans who become the Persians and the Hindus in the east. China, meanwhile, is being invaded by basically the same type of people, steppe nomads, with horse-drawn, two-wheeled chariots that go in raiding. That may begin as far back as the Lung Shan peoples. So during this second millennium, it really starts with the Hyksos invasion of Egypt, 1700 BC, where a mixed group of Indo-Aryans and Semites come raiding out of Palestine with the two-wheeled chariot and the compound bow, or the composite bow. I get those confused sometimes. And they come down and they conquer the Delta Valley. Just lower Egypt, the Delta Valley, that's it. They leave Upper Egypt untouched, which was their mistake. And they set up a colony at Avaris. And some of them may have been, some historians have suggested this may be the expulsion of the Hyksos, may be the Exodus, because the name of Jacob was the name of one of their rulers. Jacob El was one of their rulers, so we're already getting echoes of what will later be Hebrew common names. They rule from about 1700 to 1500, and then they're expelled by the brothers from the south, from Upper Egypt. They come up with their armies, and they expel the Hyksos. And of course, they take their weapons, the two-wheeled chariot and the composite bow, and use them. From that point on, now the Egyptians have the wheel. They never needed it for transportation up to that point because they were just going up and down the Nile. So this series of invasions that takes place is a process whereby Indo-Aryan and Indo-European and steppe nomads come down raiding with their horse-worshipping cults, and they intermix with the local native farming populations, and the deities mix. The Indo-Aryans bring in deities like Poseidon and Zeus, and they mix them with deities like Demeter and Persephone, very old mother goddesses, and it isn't just mother goddesses. So they intermix and interbreed, and then at a certain point, between about 1500 BC or so and 1200, we get the birth of this second wave, this second generation of high civilization across the board with China, India, Persia, the Hebrews, and the Greeks. And this civilization is eminently philosophical now. They all are born out of a religious mentality because religion is the matrix of civilization. You can't have civilization without the womb, the uterus of religion. That's what gives birth to everything. That's what these nihilist idiots and these atheists don't understand. They just don't get it. And so the second generation comes in, and we get across the board Jasper's axial age, starting with the Upanishads in India, and we get the 100 schools in China, most of which we've lost due to book burnings. And we get Pythagoras and Plato, the pre-Socratics before them, obviously, Plato and Aristotle. And so we get this, and the Hebrews are religious, but they're also philosophical. They also have a very ethically philosophical way of looking at the world through the lens of their religion. So I consider them to be philosophical. And so that's the second generation. And then the third generation comes into being with the great world non-ethnically bound and non-place bound religions of Christianity, Mahayana Buddhism, and Islam. So those come into being. We get all the different species of Christianity. Nestorian Christianity goes east. We get Orthodox Christianity that becomes the basis of the Byzantine world, and we get Catholic Christianity, which becomes the basis of the West, what Toynbee calls the far Western world. And the thing about these religions is that they're still with us today because they're not place-bound. They're not bound to a local geography, so they can leave and be exported very easily, and also because they are not ethnically closed. You don't have to be born of a Jewish mother in order to say, I believe in Christianity, or Islam, or Buddhism. Buddhism, doesn't matter what caste you come from. All you do, these are religions of credo, not ethnicity. So they pave the way here, and the reason why they're still with us and so powerful and so strong is because they're not place-bound and they are not ethnically selective. And so I see a fourth generation coming in here, but I'm going to leave it there because I want you to subscribe and read the article for yourself and make your give me your feedback on there. And keep in mind, I still do private astrology readings. Patreon contributions are definitely appreciated, and I will put the link for the Substack article down below here.